My name is Kishore Borra. Currently working as Managing Director of Energy Tech Global, and I am also currently serving as the Managing Committee member of Hyderabad Software Enterprise Association. And I would like to thank Brother Josh, Rain, Pastor Ben, and the Calway Connect team for giving me this opportunity to stand here and be able to talk to you. I'm really excited to spend next 1 hour or so mainly talking about leadership principles and also specifically about how to lead through crisis. And everything that I'm going to share here is completely based on my personal experience. So I'm going to rely more on this slide deck. Feel free to switch off these lights if you think it would help everyone to see it better. Hope this would work. So as sister mentioned, it so happened that I ended up writing 2 books on leadership. So my first book is Don't Coast, and it is all about how to accelerate your personal and professional growth. So I've explained 4 P's which one need to master in order to accelerate their personal growth, and at the same time another set of 4 P's which you must master in order to accelerate your professional growth too. I'm not going into the details. And maybe a year later, I wrote another book. It's called Get Leaderized. And while I was reading that book, probably in the maybe middle of the book, I took a break for a couple of days and I thought I will read my first book. And it was so pathetic. And probably my mother and my brother probably would read it. What I'm trying to say is, if you are constantly on a growth journey, if your level of awareness is constantly, increasing, you will not get excited about your past work, right? And if it still excites you, then probably you have taken a pause on your intentional growth journey, or you are not in the right environment so that you can further, grow. Talking about my second book, Get Leaderized, it's all about how do you set up world-class teams, how do you put your leadership into top gear, and how do you wish to be the leader that you wish you had. And in that book, I spoke about inside-out leadership. It's basically another word for self-leadership. And I explained why one should be bigger on the inside than outside, better on the inside than outside. So now we are living in a world where everyone is so keen to build their personal brand, to look good on social media, so that they always end up bigger on the outside than inside, better on the outside than inside. And Kishore, what do you mean by being bigger and better on the inside? I'm talking about character, I'm talking about competency, I'm talking about consistency, credibility, integrity, authenticity, trustworthiness, walking your talk, showing more than telling, being more than doing. Again, I'm not going into the details. That's the kind of area that I focused on, inside-out leadership. And then I explained why credibility is called the new leadership currency. For me, the new leadership currency is credibility. I did extensive research on Satyam Ramalingaraju, but based on the advice of my lawyer, I could not put the entire research that I have done in the book, but it is still available in my blog. And I wrote about what is your biggest separator. Your team is your biggest separator. What kind of miracles, what kind of things that you can create if you are really focused on your team and looking after the well-being of your team members. And then I wrote about the new receiving. For any leader, giving is the new receiving. Why giving would be called as the new receiving for a leader. And then I wrote about the organization culture. I did extensive research on Mumbai Dabbawalas and the 26/11 Mumbai Taj attacks. I don't know how many of you know, when Mumbai Taj attacks have happened, there are 1,700 people inside the hotel, both guests as well as the employees. That event has happened for close to 3 days. There are only 32 casualties. 32 people have died towards the end, and half of them were the staff of the Taj, right? Every single employee of Taj, they know the exits, entrances, the kitchen galleys, they know everything. None of them. Some of them, they came out only to escort the guests. None of them, decided to come out of that building. So I was so passionate about this. When I realized that this was taken as a case study in Harvard, under the category leadership from below. Then I did an extensive research, and then I went through the journals that the Harvard University published on their research. And there were some fascinating things, why Taj Group puts a premium on the attitude when they're recruiting people, why they go to the remote people, talk to the school principals, identify the most eligible person who really needs a job to make a true difference in their family. Again, I'm not going into the details. Even Mumbai Dabbawalas also, I don't know how many of you know, they actually collect, sort, transport, distribute 200,000 dabbas in the, you know Mumbai, right? It's a chaos. And look at the trains in the middle of all that chaos, without having a single miss, they managed to deliver 200,000 dabbas. I was so fascinated when so much technology is being used by companies like Amazon, FedEx, Ubers, all this, and still their quality department have to work, toil day in, day out to be able to keep up their KPIs intact. And look at these guys, a group of 5,000 people, most of them are illiterates, and they are able to achieve a feat which nobody could understand. I did an extensive research, and I wrote all these books just for my sake. I am learning, I am growing, and I am studying in order to build my own organization. I thought we are living in a world where, out of sight is out of mind. After a few days, you'll forget everything. You move from point to point, day to day, and everything would fade out. So I wanted to record everything. And I don't want to record everything that I am reading. I wanted to record things that I am able to relate, things that I am able to go back and practice within my organization, things which are making a true difference in my life, in my associates or my team members' life. And that's what I did. You may ask me, why am I talking about my book? Because the talk that I'm going to give is from the last chapter of the book, which is called Leading Through Crisis. That's the last chapter. And actually, Brother Josh also had the opportunity to review one of the book and provide comments. And these books are available on Amazon and all other leading book platforms as well. So what happened is, when you look at my life ended up getting gold medals in both the universities as well. Then, having done 2 degrees, being the first generation kid, had the opportunity to study in universities and be able to see the world outside my village, and I no longer wanted to depend on my family for my livelihood when I moved to Bangalore. So I joined as a lecturer in one of the engineering college, and then I ended up marrying a girl from Sainikpuri, and then I relocated to Hyderabad. And then I thought that the best thing for me to do is to join a corporate like Sri Chaitanya. So I joined there because they can afford to pay very decent salary. So I joined there. I ended up teaching physics for IIT aspirants for about 4 years. So that was my first stint, working as a lecturer for 4 years. But what I did was, while I was doing my bachelor's, while I was doing my MSc, and I was continuously running another track. I was doing a diploma in computer applications, postgraduate diploma in computer applications. I've seen people from my village, couple of them going abroad, making a true difference to their families, and I was so determined. I wanted to make a true difference in in the life of my mother, my father, my other siblings. So I thought that's the only way that I could do. But what happened was, the moment I started learning all of that, and I was so intensely, genuinely, I was interested in coding, programming, designing. So I continued that journey. When I went to Bangalore, along with working in engineering college, I started teaching Java. But when I came here, Sri Chaitanya did not give me an opportunity because I was teaching 8 hours, 9 hours a day. But that zeal was there. And when I saw my wife getting a job into an IT company, and then I got motivated, and I started praying God that, give me an opportunity to go back and pursue my passion. And it so happened that, I started putting terms with God, and I used to go to New Life Assembly of God Church since 2004, ever since I moved here. And then I started telling God, please give me an opportunity to get into an IT field. I will take baptism. Then one day the Holy Spirit started talking to me, why don't we change the sequence, right? You go and, you trust me, and then you take baptism in holy waters, and then we will see what happens next. So then I trusted God. I went and, I took baptism, and then I started earnestly praying, rather begging, and then I got my first job in IT. And I worked, there's a company called Intergraph here in Begumpet. I don't know how many of you have seen now. It is called Hexagon, moved to moved to high-tech city. Me and my wife, we both worked there for more than 10 years. That was my second innings. I worked as a software developer, lead programmer, project leader, scrum master, manager technical, senior manager technical. So I was, because that job means so much to me. Even after a decade also, my passion did not go away. And I didn't realize that I am making a mark of my own. And I am, in many counts, I was one of the few people who have been given promotions quite, in repeated manner. And then it so happened that my ex-boss came and he asked me, I worked with New Zealand Nationalite during the stint, and I also during that 10 years period, I had the opportunity to go and live abroad in countries like Canada, US, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Germany for more than a year in UK. I was truly working with world-class teams, and wherever I go, my default setting is what can I learn from them? How can I make myself better? And that's the thing that I was constantly doing. And then it so happened that, again, to cut the long story short, in 2015, my boss came in search of me and my ex-boss. I was in Taj Krishna, and he asked me, Kishore, why don't you start an IT company for me? And I'm in the process of setting up an electricity retailing company in New Zealand, and I want someone who could build the IT platform for me. So I was tasked to build an IT platform using open source technology to do a retailing business in both New Zealand and Australia, basically selling electricity and gas. And now, to cut the long story short, here I am standing in front of you after 7.5 years. Now, a team of 225 people are working with me in 2 different offices in Hyderabad. Now, me and my boss, we managed to build an empire of $200 million dollar business in 2 different countries, and it is still growing. And I'm not taking any credit if it was not for the God. And also, I'm now going to share how that has happened. How an out and out techie who does not know anything rather than being so delighted in his coding skills, design skills, and delivery skills, how we managed to build a good team, a decent team, a team of more talented people. Now I go and walk into any room in my office, I am certainly not the smartest person. How did I get to attract such a talent and make them contribute to the growth of the company? And that's what I'm going to share. So generally, whenever I go into any of these conferences and I talk to people and I ask them a question, raise your hand if you think you are a leader. You know what happens? Some people will raise their hand. Some people will wait for others to, take lead. And some of them are not sure whether they are a leader or not, and the rest of them would wait for me to repeat the question. And, I'm no different. It has actually happened to me. I used to wonder, am I a leader? Can I become a leader whom others would admire and follow? Right? And when I started this company, when I started growing, within 1 year I realized that I am trying to do something which is beyond me, which is beyond my ability. And when when I'm trying to recruit smart people from the market, I slowly started realizing that I'm kind of becoming the lid on the organization. Imagine yourself being in the room trying to interview a person who is 10 times smarter than you. Do you think that you have any chance of bringing him into the organization? The more time he spends with you, the more he realizes about you, then you will just, smile and walk out of that room. And I started realizing it. Okay, somehow I managed it, though I have zero knowledge of setting up all these, foreign subsidiaries. Somehow I managed the show, but now people is becoming a bottleneck for me. How would I attract good people, And then I slowly started realizing that I'm trying to do something which is way bigger than myself. That's when I realized that, okay, either I do something so that it would change the course of my organization, so that I can bring or attract right people into the organization, or you pass on the mantle to someone else, settle yourself doing the same old coding, same old delivery, and whatever you are good at doing all these years. And let me tell you, friends, if you feel something is important to you, you'll find a way. Otherwise, you'll find an excuse. And I was in search of improving my leadership skills, in search of improving my network skills, relationship skills. I never had the need to stand in front of people and talk like this as well previously. I never needed to do it, right? And that's when, again, to cut the long story short, I happened to see some of the DVDs being put on sale in New Life Assembly of God Church in Millennium Gardens here. And then I purchased one DVD. It happens to be a DVD of John C. Maxwell. And then I drive a Honda City. I put it while going back along, though my wife and my kids were there, I put it inside I inserted the DVD, and Here comes John C. Maxwell on the screen. And then you know what he tells? He comes on the screen and then he start, this is, now I'm going to, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to share a defining moment. This is the biggest revelation to me. He comes on the screen and then start telling me that, you know what, Kishore, leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you're someone who is thinking that having a title would make you a leader, you're absolutely wrong. And if you're also someone who thinks that not having a title, not having some position would not make you a leader, you're again absolutely wrong. And that day I started learning from him. It's all about influence, and he started giving me some examples. You know, let's assume that you've got a school-going kid. Early morning when he gets up from the school, when he goes to the school, the mother will have the highest influence, right? She will decide what he will eat, what he will wear, when he will step out of the house, and then wait for the bus. The moment this kid gets into the bus, probably he would be having the most influence. Everyone would maybe love to sit right next to him and have his company. And the moment he goes into the school, and probably the teacher will have the most influence. She'll be the dominant influencer. And once he goes to play in the playground, probably the neighborhood bully might be having the most influence. And once he comes back home, probably the father would be having most influence at the dinner table as well. I'm not talking about good influence or bad influence. Even Osama bin Laden is also considered as a leader. There are bad influences, there are good influences. But right now, we are talking about leadership. Obviously, we are talking about, needless to say, that we are talking about good influence. So the point that I'm trying to highlight here is, title is different, position is different, influence is different. I know each one of you will have some experiences in your workplace, in your organization. You would always be looking at someone to nod their head, because you know that their feedback is valued more than anyone else, no matter whether they've got the title or they're not having the title as well, right? And if some of you are from, the corporate world, or from your, offices, businesses, working with teams, now you understand what I'm talking about. You will always find someone who is always passionately, genuinely interested in helping person who is sitting on his right, person who is sitting on his left. And some of them, they would not need credit. And if you are someone who wants to help, who is also interested in helping person sitting on your left, person sitting on your right, but the next moment you wanted to run to your manager and tell, you know what, this is me doing it, then the next day that person would not come to you. But Kishore, why should I help? Why should I help that person? I'm not telling that you should help them with a instead of attitude. It should be an in spite of attitude. You should not try to help it at the cost of not doing your own work. You should do your work. In spite of that, you should try to help the people in your team, people in your organization, people in your division, people in your volunteer network. If you start doing it, and if you are not taking credit for it, they'll not get intimidated by you. They would genuinely feel, I have a friend in him, I can always go, I can always talk to him. You are a leader. You are a leader to the person who is sitting on your right, sitting on your left. You don't need to have a title. You don't need to have a position. And let me also tell you, if you have that attitude of helping people continuously, day in, day out, adding value to people, day in, day out, you know what? Within no time, you will consider to be the most valuable person within that team, within that division, within that organization. In the process of helping others, what are you doing to yourself? You're actually adding value to yourself, right? Can you stop the brightness from sun by holding your hand? No, you can't. At right point, you will start making the difference. You will start, because you can connect all the dots, you will be able to put a better perspective than everyone else sitting in that room. Are you with me? And then people, this is another problem in corporate world. People get demotivated if they do not get promotion. I think Pastor Ben touched it while he was talking here. People always love to find problems, but they will not show the same enthusiasm to offer solutions. Let me tell you, if you are someone who is getting demotivated by thinking that your boss is not recognizing your work, your CEO is not recognizing your work, or your business owner is not recognizing your work, you're not being treated fairly, don't worry about it. Don't get demotivated just because you have not got the promotion. In every organization, there is one position which is always vacant. You know what is it? It's called chief problem solver. It's called chief roadblock unblocker. No one need to give you that position. Let me tell you that. It's always available, all the time, for all the people in the organization. It might take some time for you to become the CEO or CFO or CXO of that company, but it doesn't take, it is not too difficult for you to become the CPO of the company for that day, for that moment, for that problem. Are you with me? So my aha moment was that day when I sat in my car, when I listened to this tape from John C. Maxwell, when he started telling me that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Leadership cannot be awarded, cannot be appointed or assigned. It only comes from influence, right? And then this is another thing. He started, until that point, I used to think that if you want to establish yourself as a great leader, you need to have some born talents. You need to born with some gifts, some traits, some talents. Only then, when you are being dropped in any group, any situation, you will emerge as a leader. That's the kind of mindset that I've got. I'm not a born leader. I came from, first generation people who ever got exposed to school system. I'm not a born leader. I do not have all these qualities. I can never become, no matter what I do, I can never become a leader. That's the kind of mindset that I carried all the time. But that day, when I was sitting in my car, John Maxwell from my screen, he started yelling at me, started telling me that, no, you are wrong. Move away from that mindset. It's a skill which can be studied, learned, practiced, mastered. How many of you know that there are plenty of books, there are plenty of leaders, proven leaders in the market. If you as Pastor Ben was mentioning, how many books you read, how many podcasts, you may not need to have direct access to that person. Are they available? Are their interviews are available online? Are they having any podcasts? Do they have any recorded videos? Have they written any books? Allow them to mentor you through that. You don't need to invent everything. Our life is very short to learn everything from our own mistakes. You have to learn from others' mistakes. You have to learn from others' accomplishments. You need to see what fits well within your circumstances, to your situation, and then, you should keep gathering all those good things and then keep implementing it and then marching forward. And that was my aha moment. And he said it's a skill, it can be learned, practiced, and mastered. And it's all about adding value to others. If someone asks you, what did you learn from this session today by being part of Calway Connect, remember this. You learned about leadership. It's all about adding value to others. The day that you're being given the mantle of leadership, you should stop thinking about yourself. You lost the right to think about yourself. You should always be thinking about others. It's all about giving than receiving. The more you give, the more you receive. Why do I say that? That's the only way. See, for example, if you want to add value to someone else, without adding value to yourself, would you be able to add value to them? You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot tell what you do not know. Are you with me? So that's the only way that you can do. And this slide is also very clear, very dear to my heart. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Ask any business owner. Ask any church pastor. Ask anyone who is carrying the burden of running that organization on their shoulders, then you will understand. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Right? And this is the most popular quote from John C. Maxwell. Let me again, you will see a lot of John C. Maxwell content here. The reason being, that day I got inspired. I started reading his books. I started watching his videos. I started listening to his podcast for almost 2 years, and then I decided I wanted to go and meet him in person. I wanted to be part of his team. So I went to US, I joined his team, I allowed him to mentor me. Now I got direct access to attend some of his calls, be part of, some of his meetings and continuously learn from him. And that's why you will hear a lot of influence on my my vocabulary or whatever sentences that I am framing. If you are someone who is familiar with John C. Maxwell, you're also following him, then you will realize how much I am impacted by that gentleman. He has written 87 books on leadership. He sold more than 40 million copies in 50 different languages. He if there is any living person who knows in and out about leadership, it's none other than John C. Maxwell, because I've studied lots of people. And he says that a leader is the one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And let me also tell you, friends, if you are a leader, right, you are in people business. Especially your business needs dealing with people, whether it is customers or employees, you are in people business, and I'm talking about the employee part of it. It's so difficult to be a leader and not being liked by your people, right? And sometimes you may think that, no, Kishore, everyone likes me in my team. Then let me tell you, my friend, you are in for trouble. You're not in friendship business, you are in leadership business. If you're pleasing everyone all the time, you must be doing something wrong. You're not mustering the courage to be able to challenge them enough. Tell them, the areas that they need to grow, things that they're not doing good. And any leader, they would agree with that last statement. There are never 2 good consecutive days in a leader's life, and leaders should be used to rough times. Then you may ask me, if you say, Kishore, there are no 2 good consecutive days in leader's life, then how does a crisis would look like? How does a time of uncertainty would look like? And this is how it would look like. A crisis is several consecutive bad days that you cannot walk away, and an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that will be a turning point, a time which squeezes the leader and tests their competence. If you squeeze an orange, you get an orange juice. If you squeeze a lemon, you get a lemon juice. If you squeeze a person, you'll get what is inside, both positive, either positive or negative, right? And so what exactly happens is, I told you that everything rises and falls on leadership. So if you're a bad leader, and if you're going through a time of uncertainty, time of crisis, which means you're going through a sequence of bad days, then what would happen is you will bring your team, your organization quite fast to the ground along with you. Because a crisis or a time of uncertainty, it has got the characteristic of exaggerating anything, either in positive direction or in negative direction. And sometimes, when you're going through a time of uncertainty, a time like COVID, it need not be a COVID. COVID is a popular example. That's why I'm using that. What happens is, you don't need to thrive or grow all the time. Sometimes you just need to, keep up your organization in the same elevation. You need to just hold the organization at the same space, right? And this is another thing. So people think that crisis will make you a leader. No, crisis would actually, it does not make a leader, it reveals a leader. So think about, the person that comes to my mind is Sonu Sood during COVID time. He, that is who he is. Those are the value systems that are being taught to him by his mother, father, and the environment that he has grown up. He's not trying to do it just like that. He has got that inbuilt in him, and that's why that particular environment revealed his leadership skills to people. So crisis would never, you would not see people emerging out of crisis as just, you might see people emerging out of crisis as strong leaders. It is because that, they would show whatever characteristics that they have built over the years. Those things will get revealed during the time of uncertainty, and then help the person to navigate his organization. Napoleon Hill says there's an opportunity in every difficulty. Albert Einstein says in the middle of every crisis there is an opportunity. Leaders take adversity and make it as an advantage. As I told you that the fall during crisis is much faster, it exaggerates in a negative, both ways, both positive way and negative way. And sometimes holding everything steady during a crisis itself is an achievement. The last one is very close to my heart. Everything worthwhile in life is uphill. You know what? Many of us will have uphill aspirations, downhill habits. Everything in our life, whether it is our dream, our relationships, the targets that you wanted to achieve in your business, in your career, everything is uphill. And in times of crisis and uncertainty, so uphill is like this, right? In times of crisis and uncertainty, it is so steep. People, I see many people who join organization at an entry level. And once they join the organization, and then once they start getting 50,000, 60,000 rupees per month, and then their complete lifestyle would change. And my mentor, John C. Maxwell, says, either you pay now and play later, or play now and pay later. No matter what, life would expect you to pay. And the longer you wait to pay, the more you need to pay. I've got one more boring slide, and then I'm going to explain a story to you, because it's quite difficult to talk about leadership without storytelling. The last slide is, leaders see more than others see. They see before others see, and they also see farther than others see. So if you are a leader, you are actually sitting on a perch. Now, I am part of my executive team, but let's say I'm not one of the directors of the company. Then the directors will have, or investors and the directors will have a different understanding of the business, opinions of the business, and being part of executive team, I will have a certain portion of that visibility, and then I'll have my own understanding of the business, and my leadership team will have their own understanding of the business. So if you are a leader, because of your position, because of your title, you are entitled to certain privileged information. You will be able to see certain things before others see. You'll be able to see things which others cannot see. And if you are a leader, if you are trying to manipulate it for your own benefit, then it's not going to help you out. People would figure out, and once they realize that this gentleman has got a credibility issues, no matter what you do, they will never be able to trust you in future, right? And so this one is, people will feel less trusted with bad news than uncertainty. So let me try to explain that to you with an example. So one day I was going to Singapore. I could not get a direct flight, so I had to go to Mumbai, and from there I had to go to Singapore. So which means I've got a connecting flight in Mumbai. And the moment I went to Hyderabad airport, I realized that my flight is delayed. Then I start getting nervous, because I'm thinking about my connecting flight. And if I miss my connecting flight, I'll not be able to reach my final destination in time. And the more time it took for the display board to show the entry, then I'll get more stressed out, more freaked out. People would not be comfortable, when they are asked to deal with uncertainty. But finally, let's just say after half an hour, after 1 hour, now I could see the item there, I could see my flight. Now I know for sure that I am going to miss my connecting flight. But I can do at least something about it. I can go and I can book a hotel, or I can change my connecting flight. I can think of some alternatives. Though it is a bad news, now I know there's a bad news, I had to deal with it. So this is the human tendency. People, they are not comfortable with uncertainty. They are okay with bad news. Think about COVID. It just started as a pandemic in health. Within no time, it got converted into an emotional crisis, economical crisis, financial crisis, and if you're a parent, probably it would be a parental crisis for you too during those 2 years, right? People are okay. I know that, a very less percentage of the people, they could not see the end of, they could not see another day once they were affected with COVID. But majority, 98%, 99% of the people, though they have gone through that COVID, they're okay with the bad news. They recovered it. But what they were not okay with it is the uncertainty about the future. What is it going to be like? Right? How the world is going to be turned out. Now I'm talking about COVID. It could be just the same with your organization as well, with your business as well. Are you with me? So there are certain things that we need to learn in order to face that uncertain phase, which is what I'm going to teach through that story which I'm going to share here. So actually what happens is, generally we're all in automatic mode. Automatic means predictability. Automatic means comfort. Automatic means certainty. The moment you go through crisis, you are out of the automatic mode. It is an opposite of automatic mode is opposite to crisis. So the moment you enter into crisis, you'll come out of the automatic mode. And Pastor Ben said you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And that's where most of the growth would happen. So now, the next few minutes, I'm going to share this story and try to help you understand how to navigate through uncertain times. Sorry, this is not working. Yeah, so now I'm going to talk to you about a gentleman by name Sir Ernst Shackleton. He's an Anglo-Irish Antarctic explorer. So I wanted to make few statements before I start explaining his story. It is one of the remarkable stories of 19th century about crisis and survival. Shackleton is considered to be the role model for leadership in extreme circumstances, and especially when disaster strikes again and again. He failed to reach every goal he ever set for himself. He was supposed to be an explorer, never found anything. He was never the first to reach any place, yet men would follow him to the ends of the world and trust him with their life. Every time he turned his greatest tragedy into his greatest triumph. He is the most famous knighted Antarctic explorer that the world has ever seen. So I'm talking about Antarctic. You see it at the bottom of the screen here. So you'll find, somewhere, there next to the text Europe on the left-hand side, you'll find, UK. So those days, mostly British and Portuguese people, they've got the exceptional navigation skills. And they were always on the exploration because, they can, once they reach a place, they can make a territorial claim. They can say that this nation belongs to me here afterwards. So if they wanted to reach Antarctica, they have to come from North Atlantic Ocean to South Atlantic Ocean and then reach Antarctic here. And then if you see this side, in African continent, you'll find South Africa there. I can't point it here. So South Africa is here, and then on the South America there at the bottom, this side you will have Argentina. On the left coast, you will have Chile there. So now anyone who is on an Antarctic expedition, they have to cross the North Atlantic Ocean, enter into South Atlantic Ocean, and then reach the South Pole. Then along the way, if you zoom, you'll be able to see along the way there are lots of small islands also. And what these guys would do is, some of the British companies, some of the shipping companies, they pool money together, they set up their camps in those islands. Because some of those islands, they are quite popular for fishing, they will get some whales as well, and that's what they do. So now, this is the coldest, windiest, and darkest place on the earth. 98% of the place is covered with ice, and this is what the first expedition. So from left, the second person is Shackleton, and this is called Discovery Expedition. It happened from 1901 to 1904, and he is not the commander-in-chief for this expedition. He is the third commander for this expedition, and this expedition was led by this gentleman. His name is Robert Scott. And this team, they failed to reach the South Pole. They had to return at least, I think, around 200 kilometers away from the South Pole because of the weather conditions. But whereas this gentleman, Shackleton, he was sick, and then he was dropped in one of the island, I think around 450 kilometers away from the South Pole. From this trip, Shackleton has learned how a weak leadership would look like. He learned that, this guy Robert, he was indecisive, he was weak, he was insecure, he wanted people to like him all the time, then, for them to think about completing the mission. So anyway, he was part of this expedition. He learned certain things. He learned about how weak leadership would look like. And then he's so passionate, he's so, he's very, very interested in continuing this adventure. So he started another expedition called Nimrod Expedition. It is from 1907 to 1909. And this expedition was not supported by the government. And you may wonder why governments would support these expeditions. The first one was supported by the government. There's a possibility for scientific exploration. There's a possibility for the nations to get the fame and honor. And if they are lucky, they'll get some wealth as well. They can claim, they can claim that land as well. So this guy, he went and he met the mighty and rich of UK at that point of time. And then with a small crew of about 15 people, generally when people are going on these kind of expedition, you will have all sorts of people. You will have a meteorologist, you will have a geologist, you will have a doctor, surgeon, you will have a carpenter, you will have a photographer, you will have a cook, you will have a seaman. There are lots of people. There's a big crew which is needed. And he went and he convinced a lot of people, got the money, and he also exchanged one of the slot with wealthiest person in UK so that he can continue this expedition. And this team went as close as 97 kilometers to Antarctic. And they were just 1.5 day travel away from, 1.5 day sailing away from the South Pole. And that's when he realized that he's running out of, he knows it, but he continued to move forward. But at one point of time, he realized that it is not safe for him to take his team to move forward. If he moves further down, then there is a likely chance that He may not be able to come back. People may not survive. So he is someone, what we can learn from this particular episode is that he proved himself to be a leader who would never put his fame or honor ahead of the safety and well-being of his people. Think about someone who spent 3 years during the first expedition, another 2 years during the second expedition, is come so close to reaching his goal. It's just 1.5 days, right? But he was always thinking about his people. And he thought that it's not good for me. It's about 7 years dream, 8 years dream, 1.5 day away from his final destination, but then he realized it's not good for me. He might have as well thought that, let's give it a shot, let's see what would happen. No. So always as leaders, we need to always keep the safety and well-being of our people ahead of any other aspect, whether it is, the kind of money that you would make in your business or the kind of honor or reputation that you would get out of that episode. And then they came out. Then what happened was, in 1911, another gentleman by name Amundsen, he was the first one to reach to South Pole. Then Robert, the first person, the captain of the first expedition, he was the second person to reach that place in 1912. So this gentleman, he needed another expedition. So what he did, he thought he would this time aim to cross the Antarctic. It's a 2,000 miles long. So he wanted to cross from one end to the other end. He called this as Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. And the name of the ship that he has used was called Endurance. And he wanted a crew of 27 other people along with him. And it happened between 1914 and 1917. It all started by Shackleton giving an ad he gave this ad in London Times. Men wanted for a hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in the event of success. That's the ad. And you know what? 5,000 people applied. He divided them into 3 groups: mad, hopeless, possible. And he only spoke to those people who were bucketed under possible category. Imagine for someone like him, he's not a surgeon. He cannot recruit a surgeon, right? And I told you the list of people that would take part in an expedition like this. So he put a premium on the attitude. While he was interviewing the people, he only focused on their attitude because he knows that this is going to be a dangerous expedition. And that's why he was mostly, you could not see the text there, he was relying morely on the refer-a-friend concept. If you are in corporates, you will understand refer-a-friend concept. So he was basically depending on the feedback that he is getting from the people in their common network. Since he cannot vet the skills of a meteorologist or an archaeologist or a surgeon, he was not focusing on that. For that, he was depending on their past accomplishments, and then his screening was mainly focused on their attitude. He was always looking at what is their perspective on work, perspective in 14. How do they behave in? He will simulate certain scenarios and he will ask them to react. In times of uncertainty, times of crisis, how would they react? He was focusing on those elements. And to cut the long story short, again, he managed to get those people, and he started on 1st August, 1914. And then, by around 5th December 1914, they reached a place called South Georgia. I told there will be some islands. This is one of the whale stations. So they catch these whales and then they process it, put it in containers, wait for the ships to come so that they can send it back to countries like UK. So he reached this place. The whalers or the local mariners of this place, they know that the weather is not good because they live there, and they've seen the icebergs coming far north from the South Atlantic Ocean. They noticed that the icebergs are coming far north, and they told Shackleton, please do not move forward, and there's going to be a risk for you and for your team because the weather is not so good. But this gentleman, because he made up his mind, he set the same expectations to everyone. He made it very clear in his job advert as well. This is going to be a dangerous expedition, and you got to be ready for encountering any kind of situation. So he pressed forward. Without listening to their feedback. So that's where the South Georgia is there. You will see South Georgia there. and he wanted to, so he's not coming to this coastline, he is not coming to this point here, he's going far down. The reason being, the more interior place that you would go and, get onto the land, then the less distance that he need to cover on the ground, because his mission is to cross the Atlantic. He wanted to reach there on foot with his men. He wanted to cross Antarctic on the other side with the help of Chilean government. He has already made arrangements for another ship which he can use once he reaches to that place. So I want you to make a note of South Georgia, and I want you to make a note of Elephant Island, and it shows 750 miles distance between both of them. It's actually 800 miles, which is close to 1,300 kilometers. So now, they started on 5th, say within 2 days, on 7th December, the boat Endurance entered into a pack of ice. And then by 18th January, the boat could not move. The icebergs were acting like clams, so they were stranded in nowhere, like around 2,500 kilometers away from any habitation. There's no communication, there is nothing. So they were sitting there. They sat in that for about a month, and then he decided that he would try to move the boat with his men. So what he did was, during that 1 month period, whenever a crisis happens, whenever you have to deal with uncertain times, then you should not completely depend on your own wisdom. You need to pull together a guiding team. You should never try to, you can pray God, you can have so much faith, and you can continue to pray for wisdom and knowledge, but don't try to do everything on your own. You always need to have a guiding team. So what he did immediately was, he pulled together a new team who are good at dealing with these uncertain times. So he did that, and then he needed to create a sense of urgency. Generally what happens is, in organizations, when a crisis happens, not everyone would be able to see. If I am an entry-level employee, I would not know what is going to happen to my balance sheet. How is the future is going to be looking like, 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, how well my marketing team is doing outside. So I would be so focused, so engrossed in doing whatever little work that is given to me, I would not be bothered about anything else, right? Generally, in any organization, what people would do is, they will create a sense of urgency. They bring the transparency. They let everyone know, so that they can take everyone on the board, so that together we can encounter whatever uncertainties the business is facing. In this case, Shackleton do not need to do anything, because every single person is living in that very moment. They understand under what circumstances they are dealing with, and what is going to happen by being there, right? So he created a guiding team, and then first decision that they took was, let's try and see if we can move this 300-ton ship outside this iceberg. And they toiled hard for 2 days, and they could not move it. They only managed to move it for 400 meters, and then they decided that it's no longer going to work. The next thing that they did was, the team got together. They realized that now we should not allow anyone to fall back into despair, and they should not be worried about the current state that they are in. So what can we do? The guiding team came together, and they realized that they need to provide a mental medicine. They need to focus on the engagement, outlook, and bonding of the team. So they put a host of activities. They asked them to start playing, because you need to keep your mind busy. You should have a routine. You should have a routine, and especially in times of certainty, in times of crisis, the more free time you will have, the more time you have to think about all useless things, then the more you will get distracted, and you will not have a good feeling towards the end of the day. So he believed in that strict routine, and the team came together, and they thought that it is good if we engage the team in a strict routine. So they asked them, they never allowed anyone to be alone in their bunks. They always needed to be with someone else. They need to come out, participate in games, either singing, dancing, theatricals. So their focus was to keep them engaged, and that's what they did. Now look at what they are doing here. The other thing that they did was, he exhibited the servant leadership characteristics. Generally, if you are familiar with army rules, if you are familiar with the ranks and all of that, there's a kind of work people would do based on their ranks. The same goes with any expedition as well, any trip like this as well. And if you're talking about UK, and that's the kind of That's the kind of ancestral, legacy that they have got. But now what he did here was, he said no one is an exception, whether you are first commander-in-chief, second commander-in-chief, or third commander-in-chief, everyone needed to do the same thing. So he put a host of activities and he asked everyone to participate. There is no difference between a carpenter, between a cook versus a director of scientific exploration. And that's what he did. And you can see from these photos, he never allowed anyone to be on their own. Even while they are reading the books as well. And then he created opportunity for them to celebrate small wins. Actually, there they are celebrating the longest day of the year. The moment we navigate ourselves into troubled times, we will forget about, we will not even think about celebrations. We will not think about looking for those small wins and asking people to start celebrating it and then keeping up that spirit. Imagine someone getting stranded out of nowhere, not knowing what is going to happen. And let me also tell you that is summer. And they are moving towards winter. And if the summer is like this, then imagine wow, the winter is going to be like. You would never believe, you would never imagine that a leader would think on those lines. In times of crisis, not knowing what is his next step, not knowing what to do next, his first focus is on people. He's first trying to make them keep occupied. Right? And then I think around June month or so, then they realized, they started hearing that the timber is getting strained and the ship almost inclined by more than 30 degrees. And then he asked them to come out of the ship and then asked them to, create some makeshift arrangements. It actually looks like this with their dogs and tents. He asked them to start staying there. And then I think around October time period, 5th October, they've taken a call to vacate the ship. They came out of that ship. They took all their supplies, their dogs, everything, and then they vacated that ship. And then, so this is how, what ice gets, ice keeps. He knows it. Then you'll only see some, some remaining things related to that ship there. And they were on, so now what they did was they took three boats, lifeboats out of that ship. Now they tried to move those boats on the icebergs and they realized that they're only moving at a speed of 1 mile per day. And it is having a heavy toll on their supplies. And he realized that it is not going to go anywhere. Then he decided that we would stay. They found a big iceberg with half a mile diameter and they decided to stay on that. And then while they are staying like that, there are all sorts of people, right? Once the people realize that the mission is no longer intact and they will start rebelling, they will start showing that rebellious attitude on the leaders. And then some people would doubt the very mission and then they will start spreading the negative energy as well. You know what he did? He just followed that quote, keep your friends close, enemies closer. He identified all those people who are the doubting Thomases, who are not believing in the mission. He asked them to come and start living with the leaders of the navigating team. And he used to talk to them on a daily basis. He used to tell them, how things are going, which activities are you liking, how is your family, help me understand your family. He started making that personal connection with them. And let me also tell you that if you're a leader, people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. He made that personal connection with them, not just him, all his leadership team members. And he noticed who are spreading the negative energy, who are not buying the mission that you are on. And then he started spending more time. Think of yourself. When was the last time you spent time with the person who is, who stopped giving the same productivity that you used to give, who started behaving differently than, that he used to be? Generally what we do, we always like people who give good productivity. We love to spend more time with them. And we would never try to take a step back and try to spend time with people. Lots of life happens, lots of things would happen to your team members. You need to, if you're a leader, you need to go, you need to try to understand, give a benefit of doubt, be with them, understand what's happening, try to understand their situation, see if you can make a difference. People will forget what you said, what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Try it out once. See, try to understand your team members' world, your employees' world, what's happening in their personal spaces. Be genuinely, passionately interested about their well-being. And that's what this gentleman is doing. And the carpenter, at one point of time, he was so rebellious and he said, you are not going to be my leader. Now the mission the mission no longer exists. You are not my captain as well. And he rationalizes with them, he talks to him and he will ask him, tell me, okay, I agree, I'm no longer your commandant, but I've done it multiple times. I've been on waters for last, almost 1 decade. I've gone through more miserable conditions than this. Now I'm trying to offer my wisdom. Now you tell me what help or what ideas you can give. Let's sit together. If we see merit in it, we will discuss, debate, and we will take it forward. Right? And so then, I'm coming to the end of the story. For the first time, they got an opportunity to see the water. The iceberg moved close to the water, and then with a little effort, they could take their boats to the water, and then from there, they sailed in 3 boats, 28 men, 27 people plus Shackleton, 28 men. For 7 days, they have sailed. It's a 17 hours darkness. Minus 20 degrees centigrade. For almost 7 days, they sailed in those 3 small boats and reached Elephant Island. On 9th April 1916, they reached that place. For the first time, almost after a year, they could set their foot on solid ground, and then they could eat properly. And then what he did was, from Elephant Island, I think on 24th April, you see this is a boat, 23-foot boat, along with Shackleton, 5 other men, they ventured to cross that Atlantic Ocean from Elephant Island to South Georgia. You could have asked, he's a leader, you could have asked anyone to do that. That's their only source. Unless they reach South Georgia Island, no one is going to come and rescue them and they're going to die. Being a leader with 27 other people around him, you could have asked anyone to go and get some help. He did not do it. He is not a travel agent, he's a tour guide. There's a lot of difference between a tour guide and a travel agent. If you're a leader, you need to be a tour guide, you should not be a travel agent. A travel agent is one who would send people to places where he or she never been to. But tour guide he's been there, he's done it multiple times, he knows in and out. Imagine if you are running a business, or if you are a team leader, if you are a manager, if you are not competent enough, if you are not skilling yourself, if you are not, as Pastor Ben said, you are not intentional, you are not consistent, you do not have a personal growth plan, you are not bettering at your game, and ultimately you are not competent enough, do you think that people would look up to you in times of uncertainty? Forget about times of uncertainty, even during ordinary times also, people would not look at you. Are you with me? So you should never be like a travel agent, you should be like a tour guide. So this is leading by example. And then what he did, he took the carpenter also along with him. Carpenter is the one who rebelled against him. But he always puts people first. If you are a leader, you need to put people first. You need to let the past go. You should always, any decision that you take, anything that you do, it should be in the best interest of your team. You know why he is taking that guy carpenter? He knows that someone with a short temper, it's not good for someone with a short temper to be there, to be left alone on that island, Elephant Island, along with the other team members. We don't know how much chaos he would create, so he wanted to keep him close. And the second thing is, his skill, you look at that boat, it's a makeshift boat. His carpentry skills would come quite useful. And it's good for someone to be on the boat. We never know when we are sailing for 800 miles, right? Anything could happen and we need his help as well. And that's the kind of thing he did. So he reached for about 16 days. The other thing that he did was, when he's going, his first lieutenant commander name is Frank Wild. He was with him since Nimrod expedition. He is someone, while he was selecting his first commander-in-chief as well, look at the kind of criteria that he has used. He took someone who would complement his management style, shows lot of loyalty without being an S-man. Let me repeat it. Someone who would complement his management style, shows lot of loyalty without being an S-man. And then what he did, while he was leaving from this, he wrote everything, all the insights that he has got about those people, what he knows about all those people, what they like, what they don't like, how to deal with each one of them. He wrote all of that. He gave it to Frank Weil, made him as the first commander-in-chief, asked him to take care of this team in his absence, and then he led by example. Took 16 days to reach, the South Georgia, and then this is the team giving send-off to Shackleton on 24th April, and then they reached on 21st May 1916, they reached South Georgia Island, but they reached on the other side of it, and you don't want to venture again into water, so he has to cover by foot that 32 kilometers from one side of the island to the other side of the island. He went there and then he only took 1 day rest. Then he took the boats there and then he started going back with his team. He left his team, he took one more person and then he started going. He don't want to put these people on risk. He took one more person and he started going back. And it took 3 months for him, 3 failed attempts, and then finally had to go all the way to Chile. That's why I mentioned about Chile in the beginning. He had to go all the way to Chile and then he had to take the help of the Chilean government and then get their navy into action, and then finally the boss arrives here on 30th August. So what are the lessons that we can learn from this gentleman? But before we go there is a historian by name Sir Raymond Priestley. He wrote, for scientific discovery, go with Scott. For speed and efficiency of travel, give me Amundsen. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton. Not even one person died, right? And imagine the kind of circumstances that they have gone through. For him, more than facing the challenges offered by weather, the biggest challenge for him is to face the people. How would we make them believe that they can actually survive from this situation? How can I make them believe that there is a way out? And he also always is a person of faith. And he always believed that there is a way out. This is not end of it. There's always a way out. Take one day at a step, deal with it, take best decisions with the knowledge that you are aware of, or the conditions that you are aware of, and make sure that people are occupied. But there's one thing that he did. He never allowed any kind of disobedience. Never allowed anyone to start doubting what the team is doing. So if you look at it towards the end, if you look at the lessons, I don't need to explain that to you. He's a tour guide. Be a tour guide, not a travel agent. If you really want to be successful in your craft, be competent. Be available to your team. If you are competent enough, not available, not accessible to your team, it's of no use. If you are accessible, not competent, again, it's of no use as well. Are you with me? So you should always, as a leader, you should always enhance your game consistently, intentionally. Every day you should upskill yourself. Only then you will move towards that competency levels where people would look up to you. Why there was not so much of dissidence? Why people were not so rebellious against Shackleton when they encountered that situation? There is a possibility that if imagine yourself and myself in that situation, there's a possibility that we might fight with each other and die then and there itself. Or we might kill the gentleman for bringing all of us. Though we signed for the assignment, we might kill that gentleman as well. Are you with me? So it's very, very important always to, think about people. I missed my point. What I was trying to tell you is, why people did not do that? Because they know this guy is experienced. He has done it. He's been there. He went on 2 previous expeditions. He knows he's good at his craft. He's better than us. I can trust this gentleman. Is your people having the same confidence on you like that? Do they think that you are someone who could navigate them through, several consecutive bad days? Think about that. Have the mindset of a servant leader, and I told you that as well, right? Quite contrary to the naval system, the army system, armed force system. And he said, everyone is same. From this day onwards, let me also tell you, until the ship was stuck in ice, there are different, the distinction of position was there, and then everyone was supposed to do their own work, right? Someone is meant for cleaning the floor. Not everyone would do it. Someone was supposed to, maybe catch the fish or cook. At one point, what happened when they were, for 2 months, when they were on that big iceberg, they ran out of their supplies almost. Then the team, they not only enhanced their skill set in catching whales or penguins and seals, they also taught everyone. There are certain competitions also being conducted. So look at creative ways with which the team came up to engage people, which would lead back into their survival. And then at some point of time, they have to kill their dogs as well to survive. So coming back to this point, have the mindset of a servant leader. And I explained about that. If you're a servant leader, you will never put yourself above others. And at a time like crisis, if you are someone who always think that, I am CEO of this company, I am the owner of this business, I am different from these people, my mindset is different, my thought process is different. A time like COVID or any crisis time will bring all of us onto the same level. You would also start feeling like human, like your other fellow employees. Focus on the team camaraderie. I'm not going to explain that. Let go of the past and always act in the best interest of the team. I gave you certain examples of how Shackleton is always put his team interest ahead of his personal differences with the people. Put people first. It's always there, unless you are someone who is putting your people first, you will not have any future as a leader. As I said in the beginning, the day you have taken mantle as a leader, you have lost your right to put yourself first. You should always think about your people. You should always think about how can I add value to them today? What are the ways through which I can add value to them today? How can I make a difference in their lives? I also told you that people would not care how much you know until they care how much you care. Are you really caring about your people? Are you really adding value to your people? Or are you worried that I am not their team leader, I am not their manager, so I don't need to make any difference in their lives? I told you, you don't need that. If you have that mindset, if you start adding value to them, you are increasing your area of influence with them, which means you are positioning yourself as a leader. Be flexible, have a plan, and be ready to change it. There are lots of plans. If you look at this story, when the ship was struck, first they thought they would, make some path and then they will move the ship, and they could not do it. And when they were struck, they were just sitting there inside for some more time, right? And then they thought maybe we will make some makeshift tents and then we will stay there. And they did not work out. And then they started moving the boats. And then they decided that is also not going to make any difference. Then they had to wait for some more time. So always, you should not just stick to one way of doing things. There are many people who would say that we have always done things like this. We don't want to change it. And if you say that this is how we have done things and we don't want to change it, you are not going to have a bright future. The human tendency is as such that it will always oppose any kind of change. Go and change the desk or seat of your team member. Next day morning, they'll start feeling, what happened? Why are they changing my desk? Why am I asked to move from here and go and sit somewhere else? So that's the kind of tendency. But you should actually, crisis or times of uncertainty would teach us why we need to have multiple plans. If A doesn't work, we need to go to B. Not knowing whether B is good or bad, you should try. And then you should be ready to have another fallback plan as well. So, in summary, what you need to do is, whenever your organization has to go through any kind of change, when you are dealing with things which are beyond your control, you don't know how to navigate, you don't have the right answers, you should always first create a sense of urgency, because first you need to make sure that whatever you know, whatever awareness that you have, whatever understanding that you have got about the circumstances, first make sure that every other person in the organization has got the same understanding. Communicate with them, create a sense of urgency, tell them the situation that we are in, motivate them to give their best, make them ready to accept any kind of changes, as a result of, the outcomes by the time you come out of that uncertain period. Then you pull together a guiding team. Never try to do things alone. Whether it is ordinary times or crisis times, you should always have a team. But the need is far greater in times of uncertainty, times of crisis, than ordinary times. You should pull people together. You should forget about everything else. I don't know whether you heard about Winston Churchill. During the World War, he brought all his opponents into a bunker, and he took most of his popular decisions came from the advices given by all his opponents from opponent political parties. So you should always put people first, think about your team, think about their families, think about their well-being, then bring the best men into the room, sit, ask them to lay out a vision, lay out a strategy, not knowing that whether that is accurate or not. And then start getting the buy-in. Once you develop that change vision and strategy, start communicating and start understanding. You need to get people's buy-in, right? How would you get their buy-in without properly helping them understand? And in order to do that, you need to communicate effectively, and which is what it says. And then you need to set short-term goals and produce. Okay, anyway, I said so many things, but depending on your current journey, your awareness level, the nature of the business that you do, kind of people that you would work with, you will be able to at least relate a couple of things out of whatever I mentioned. And I would like to again thank Rain, Ben, and Josh, and the Calway Connect team for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.